Spykar's been now for the last 26 years at the forefront of the denim business in India, and it's one of the only homegrown brands which has managed to live up to the promise that it's kind of made to its consumers. So we are a very young from a consumer perspective company, and one of the most seasoned ones as far as the jeanswear business is concerned in India. I would like to say that I am only focusing and only addressing a young audience, but how life is that people aspire to be young. So we have had customers who have been with us for a very long time as well. So if I have to look at my buying population today, it would be anywhere between say 15 to 40. I'm very happy with that set of consumers. Though we keep on talking to a very young millennial mindset, but from a final consumer, he cuts across from 15 to 40. So since the brand has been here for the last 26-27 years, we've grown with the country as far as how the retailing has evolved in the country. So back in early days when we started off, we normally never had the brand stores, nor did we have e-commerce and the more organized national chain stores and departmental stores. It used to be more of a mom and pop kind of a business, which was spread across the length and breadth of the country. And so Spykar started its own business from addressing and serving these shopkeepers. They were shopkeepers who were probably owning the store and also managing the stores themselves. So right from a 300 square feet store to a probably 10,000 square feet store, we had a lot of these family-owned retail outlets to whom Spykar used to supply. And then gradually how the markets kind of evolved. It started off with the departmental stores presence being felt. So Spykar from that perspective was very progressive in nature as an organization, that we evolved with the changing environments, and so as and when the new formats evolved and came into being, Spykar moved into those formats. So starting from a mom and pop and distribution led business to a shop and shop business with the large format retailers, then moving on to our own standalone stores. So today we have around 250 of them in the country, and embracing the whole e-commerce bit, which has kind of livened up the whole marketplace in the last 7 to 10 years. So we cut across probably all channels of sales, and we intend to be at the forefront of all evolving markets. So I would be having around 270 plus people on my roles, plus off-roll on third-party roles. We should be carrying around 1,000 people more. We've always grown in the last 27 years as far as the mom and pop store business is concerned, in absolute number terms. But yeah, as a percentage contribution to the overall business, obviously because the emergence of new channels are there, I will not say the significance of the business has dropped, but I think the share of that business to the whole business has been reducing. But still, from an absolute number perspective, we are growing at least 15 to 18% per annum on that business, the distribution business. We have in excess of around 18 distributors in the country. Plus there are some markets which have been served directly by the company itself. So from a distribution purely perspective, we have around 18. I believe strongly that consumerism has just started off in India. And we probably just 15 to 20-year-old as far as consumer markets are concerned, and it's nowhere close to its peak. So I think that the whole interesting piece has just started, but we've grown pretty fast. So from that perspective, India that way catches up very quickly. I think there's so much more to do in India, and there's so much more that will happen. So for us, we see a lot of upside in the business that I am in, especially given the demographics that the country has, matches exactly what the kind of demographic fix that probably Spykar needs. So it just is kind of very symbiotic business relationship that we have with the Indian audiences. So I think there's so much more to do, and there's so much more that will happen at Spykar, and we will surely grow as much as what the country grows. because again, if you see fashion as a business, largely depends on the sentiments. It's you normally you need to create a need to kind of buy into fashion. You really don't need it, but so it moves with the sentiments of the nation. And I feel that because the markets are so large and there are yet quite a bit of untapped markets in India, the scope overall is pretty big. I think for the next 15-20 years, no, I don't think anybody should be complaining on demand not being enough. If you look at denim as a product and as a category, it's quite synonymous with one's personality. People really align with a pair of jeans or a fit in particular basis how that person himself is or she is. So from that perspective, I think the loyalty exists a lot more in this category versus many other categories. People do become creatures of habits as far as denims are concerned, and that helps a lot to retain a consumer. Having said that, the new audiences and the millennials are people who are quite open to try stuff, and we are very happy to have them experiment as much. We've grown well and we've done well primarily because we've kind of focused very highly on our product and the offerings to the consumer, whether it's our quality, whether it's our fits, whether it's the overall product, the look and feel. That's very paramount for us. If you see, Spykar is not a very cheap product considering that it's an Indian brand. So our inputs are so graded and so good that it adds to the cost, and hence the price at which we deliver to the consumer is probably as much as what any international brand sells today at. So coming to it, I think if I keep my promise and my delivery on everything that I've kind of promised intact, we think that we'll have a lot more consumers. Whoever enters the business will stay with us, but we'll have to live with the kind of consumer behavior now that we are now witnessing. And luckily and thankfully, we are in a market which is so large that I don't think we'll ever be short of customers. So as I told you, my primary consumer is a 15 to 25 guy or a girl, and he's kind of it's a cliche term, but he's a netizen. So he's actually on his phone through the day, his gadgets, his phones, various stuff, apps, and all that. He basically is his companion is in his hand today. So it would be suicidal for me to not really look at digital interventions when I talk to my consumers. Not just to propagate the brand and what we do, but also probably a way to reach out to him and dispense to him. So we are very consciously and very aggressively adapting and adopting digital ways to speak about the brand, to convey stuff to them, at the same time also dispense and carry on commerce with them through this medium. So yeah, e-commerce is very much very high on our agenda. Communication through the social media platforms are very high. A lot of my marketing budget that you spoke of goes mainly into creating the kind of content that we need to serve these consumers through the digital medium. So I would say that as an organization, we are looking at digital very, very seriously, and I mean, it would be foolish not to do that. So everything probably what's needed for the business, what's needed for our audiences to be engaged with, is being followed at our end. So whether it's BI, there is a keen effort from our end to kind of analyze whatever data we have, to actually work hard on creating the right data, and from there probably so much more that can happen on e-commerce. So we are also now trying to get e-commerce into our own fold now instead of third party. So what we've done is now we tied up with 3 or 4 very interesting partners who have given us the ability not to let the customer go off without a pair of, in case we don't have probably a missing size is there, or even from an endless aisle perspective. So my stores, as you know, we are more into penetration and more of serving the smaller markets. and with smaller format versus very large stores. So, and Spyker's moving into a lot more categories, right from accessories to a whole lot of different set of clothing. So it's just not casual wear, it's not just the day wear. Our ambition is also to be meaningful in the evening wear segment for our consumers. So, but a lot of things cannot be dished out from my physical space. So the endless aisle concept on the Omni makes a lot of sense. I can probably create an environment where consumers can go through my whole range, probably on a pad or some kind of a device, and then from there I can ship out stuff. So all of this is getting worked with respect to these 3-4 partners of mine, and so you order online and get it picked up from the store, order online, get it shipped out from my store. All of it is happening, and we are hopeful that probably in the next year or year and a half we should see at least 6 to 7% of the business coming from Omni. Office 365 is probably as old as how Spykar is, maybe more than that also. So, and a lot of people have been brought up on these tools. So we are using it quite extensively. 365, your Excels, PowerPoints, OneDrive specifically. At a management level, it just gives us enough convenience to share our data seamlessly between people within the teams, probably, or intra department as well. So we are quite extensively used Microsoft Excel and as I told you, the OneDrive. So our POS was internally developed, and it was developed on .NET solution, and the framework was .NET basically, and it's been very stable for the last 12 years. We've been using it. We've not found any hitches on the same, and in fact the teams are very reticent to move away from this to some other solution as well. So from that perspective, I think Microsoft has been at the forefront, at least for us, on our POS solutions. It's built on the SQL Server. As a brand, we are currently selling through a whole huge franchise network, and as you know, secondary sales are as critical to be understood as much as primary sales. So the platform on which we were working, the ERP that we had internally developed, was not being able to give us a seamless view on secondary and primary both at any given time. So the business expansion and the scope that we saw ahead kind of required us to move to a much more robust ERP platform. And when we went through and looked at many options, we arrived at aligning with Microsoft on the AX platform of theirs, and we started implementing it probably three and a half years back. What we realized is that it gave us all the conveniences and the opportunities to speak and to understand the business seamlessly. So it was amongst the few people where we could probably create a bridge between the primary and secondary, and we were very buoyant about the fact that we could see the business in its state real time, and map out our business plans and strategies basis that, and also keep a close view on what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, we've kind of moved a long way from those days when we started implementation. So it's kind of creating a very good holistic view of the business for us at one go. Our OMS is also on the same platform. We have the opportunity to have the HRMS also coming out from there. Though we have been using a separate tool on HRMS and our order management service system also, but we are hoping to align all of it and bring it all on the AX at some point of time. So there is a lot we are expecting out of AX, and we have another couple of years to go before we may have to migrate to a 365. So I'm just hoping that before that all the glitches and all are sorted out so that we can peacefully migrate to 3. What we are currently, what we have actually designed for ourselves in the areas where ERP will be of help to us is that right from the time my design team conceptualizes a product onwards till the products coming into my warehouse, and then from there onwards the whole order management system, your PO generations, your sales order generation, and then eventual dispatches and the warehouse management system. So all of it we are hoping that will come out of the whole single ERP that we are kind of deploying. So today probably the WMS is not being used for us. It's mainly the inventory management system today and the accounting piece which is being done through our AX. And soon we'll migrate from the current tools that we are currently using to everything on AX. Currently I am not seeing that visibility with respect to it coming out of AX. It would need a lot of changes to the product that we currently have. So we may be employing another something which will sit on top of this to help us plan the whole piece. So the whole exercise is split into 2 seasons. There is a year-long business plan, but then it's divided into 2 business seasons. And so the whole teams which are from the marketing, sales and production are involved in this whole exercise along with finance. So plus of around 12 people who are quite very intricately associated to create these business plans twice a year. And once we feel that today it's being done on an Excel and I want to migrate it completely to the ERP. I think there would be in excess of 150 people who would probably be working in realizing the plan, and there are more verticals being added to the business, so that count is going to keep going up. So currently all the accounting piece of mine is currently resting on Microsoft AX, and there is this primary versus secondary that we have, which is getting deputed today in a few days. And once that happens, then we will be able to prepone our closing times from August, September to maybe towards early June or July. Yeah. So I think it will bring a lot more efficiency once all of it is in place the way we had envisioned it. So there are various checkpoints in the AX, Microsoft AX that we are using, and that also serves as internal controls to ensure that the teams don't go beyond the processes which have been laid down. So there has been a bit of customization which has happened with respect to the product that Microsoft AX is, and the customization is because there's a particular way that the business happens and it needs to happen. So from that perspective, at various intervals and at various stages, there are enough checks being deployed so that nothing untoward really happens, and we have a visibility of everything that's happening within a required time frame. So one of the check is when my design team is in the process of planning their range, and when they're actually executing their range and creating the first prototypes, because the business needs on e-commerce a whole list of attributes of each product. We have created a whole piece within the Dynamics AX, Microsoft AX, which allows my teams to populate as they go into designing, as they design a product. So unless they don't populate that, it may be difficult to move to the next level. So that's one of the. So this is one of the examples. Similarly on dispatches. So if at all it's going from an X warehouse of mine, and the return logistics have to come to a Y warehouse, unless until I don't populate it completely afresh, my sales orders and my return orders, it does not process the orders at all. So these are certain checks so that we ensure that the goods which are supposed to come back to an X warehouse doesn't go back to a Y warehouse. So I think all these kind of checks are being managed well, and that's kind of serving just to ensure that things don't go out of hands. In the Microsoft AX, we have built in the whole approval management system also, where whether it's a sales order, whether it's a purchase order, there is a hierarchy on approvals which are needed for it to get executed. So, for example, there would be the final approval from a head of department needed for the next thing, and that also has to go and sit well with the business plan which has been thought through. So all of that has been built in for us to have a seamless working and a much more sure-footed working.